The story begins not in Dubai's glittering skyline, but in a small town in East Africa. On the morning her plane touched down in Dubai, Amina felt her dreams finally within reach. She was just 23 years old, the first in her family to leave her village, carrying a passport her parents had helped her buy by selling 2 cows. She believed she was coming for a job as a hotel receptionist, a golden ticket out of poverty. Instead, that dream would unravel into a nightmare that still haunts her family today. Amina grew up in Kampala, Uganda. Life had always been hard. Her father was a fisherman. Her mother sold vegetables in the market. They lived on less than $5 a day. When a recruiter visited their town, claiming to offer young women stable jobs in Dubai's booming hospitality industry, Amina jumped at the chance. She wasn't alone. The recruiter, a polished man who spoke flawless English, promised salaries of $1,500 a month, life-changing money. He showed glossy brochures of luxury hotels and spoke of opportunities that would allow women to send money home, build houses, and educate their siblings. What Amina didn't know was that the recruiter was part of a network, one that had already trapped dozens of women before her. The process was quick. The agency arranged her passport, visa, and flight. Amina's family scraped together $300 to cover processing fees. She was told she'd be met at the airport by a company driver. And indeed, when she landed in Dubai, a black SUV was waiting. The man who greeted her was warm and polite, offering her bottled water. He drove her past glittering skyscrapers, malls with gold-plated interiors, and pristine beaches. Everything looked like a dream. But the SUV didn't stop at a hotel. Instead, it pulled up at a private villa. Just for orientation, she was told. Inside the villa were several other young women, some from Kenya, some from Ethiopia, others from Tanzania. All had been promised jobs. They shared their excitement, laughing nervously about starting work soon. But days passed. No one was taken to a hotel. Instead, men began to visit the villa at night. At first, the women were told to serve drinks and entertain guests. Then came the pressure for more. When Amina resisted, she was told her passport had been kept safe by the agency. She could not leave. She owed the money for her ticket, visa, and accommodation, a debt she could never realistically repay. What followed was a ritualized cycle of abuse. Parties that lasted all night. Older men, some drunk, some violent, who treated the women as disposable. They were forced into degrading acts, some so humiliating that the women never spoke of them to each other in the daylight. The most shocking were what the women whispered about behind closed doors, the so-called Porta Potty requests. Wealthy men offering large sums of money to use the women in ways too degrading to imagine. For those who refused, the punishment was severe: beatings, food withheld, or threats to their families back home. Amina's smile, once bright and eager, began to fade. Her phone calls home grew shorter. When her mother asked how she was, she forced cheer in her voice, saying only, "I'm working hard, so I'll send money." But she never could. Then came the first death. One of the women, a 19-year-old from Nairobi, was found lifeless after a night with wealthy clients. The official story was suicide. The recruiters said she had jumped from the balcony of a luxury apartment. But the others whispered that she had been killed, either from the abuse or silence for resisting. Her body was quickly repatriated. No investigation followed. For Amina, the nightmare deepened. Each day, she felt the walls closing in. The dream she once had of lifting her family from poverty was now twisted into something dark and inescapable. On the 7th month of her captivity, Amina disappeared. Her friends said she had been taken to a party with a wealthy businessman. She never returned. Her family back in Uganda received a call 2 weeks later. Amina was dead. The story was the same, suicide. But her mother knew. "My daughter was not the kind to take her own life," she cried. The truth of what happened to Amina, and dozens of women like her, was buried in silence, hidden behind Dubai's gleaming towers. But one day, a BBC journalist would uncover the ring, and the world would finally hear whispers of the horrors inside. When Amina's death was reported back home in Uganda, her family received no official details. Just a cold message. She jumped. But neighbors whispered otherwise. The story of her sudden death spread across the community. A young woman full of dreams, gone too soon. She became yet another name on a list of women who had traveled to Dubai in search of a better life and never returned. For months, there were no answers. Families across East Africa shared similar stories. Daughters who left with high hopes, only to return in coffins. Some bodies bore bruises, others arrived with paperwork citing suicide. Yet the pattern was too consistent to ignore. In 2023, international journalists began digging. A BBC team traced the stories of several East African women. Their investigation led to one name, Charles Mwizigwa, a man once known as a London bus driver. Now, he was accused of orchestrating lavish sex parties in Dubai, recruiting women under false pretenses and coercing them into sex work. The exposé revealed chilling details. Mwizigwa was not acting alone. He was part of a network with connections in East Africa, Europe, and the Gulf. Recruiters targeted vulnerable women with promises of jobs. Once in Dubai, passports were confiscated, debts fabricated, and escape made nearly impossible. Women were forced into situations so degrading they often couldn't speak of them afterward. Some were subjected to the notorious Porta Potty fetish parties, where wealthy men paid not just for sex, but for humiliation. The sums involved were staggering, sometimes $20,000 for a single night, but the women rarely saw a fraction of that money. The more the journalists uncovered, the more sinister the story became. Deaths were routinely labeled as suicides, with little or no forensic investigation. Families back home received bodies, but no explanations. In some cases, documents were missing or inconsistent. The Sun published accounts linking multiple deaths of young African women in Dubai to these exploitative parties. Financial Times followed the money trail, raising questions about how such a network could operate so openly in a city with some of the strictest laws in the world. Among the survivors was a Kenyan woman named Lydia, who spoke anonymously. She described the villa where she and Amina once stayed, a place she called a prison with golden walls. She remembered Amina's laughter in the first days and how quickly it dimmed. Lydia eventually escaped when one sympathetic client helped her retrieve her passport and slip away to her embassy. But even in safety, she was haunted. "I survived," she said, "but part of me died there." Her testimony echoed what others whispered. The ring operated with impunity, protected by powerful figures who either looked the other way or directly profited from it. Dubai has long been a magnet for workers from East Africa and Asia. With promises of good pay, thousands arrive each year for domestic work, retail jobs, or hospitality positions. But that same migration pipeline has been exploited by traffickers. For women like Amina, the dream of Dubai was irresistible. It wasn't just about money. It was about hope, dignity, and the chance to rewrite their family's future. That hope was exactly what the traffickers preyed upon. After the BBC expose aired, outrage spread across social media. Activists demanded answers. How many women had died? How deep did the trafficking networks run? And why had authorities failed to act? K24 Digital ran headline after headline in Kenya, pointing out how the scandal revealed systemic vulnerabilities. Politicians called for stricter vetting of recruitment agencies. But on the ground, little seemed to change. In Dubai, the official response was muted. Authorities promised to investigate, but few concrete arrests were reported. Some claimed the city was reluctant to tarnish its global image as a land of opportunity and luxury. To this day, Amina's mother keeps her daughter's last photo, taken at Entebbe Airport before boarding her flight. In it, Amina is smiling, clutching her small bag, her eyes filled with hope. The questions remain. How many women have truly died in Dubai under similar circumstances? Who protects the traffickers behind the scenes? And will justice ever be served for families like Amina's? The Porta Potty scandal is not an isolated story. It's part of a larger web of exploitation that stretches from Africa to the Gulf, driven by poverty, desperation, and unchecked demand for power and control. Financial Times called it a shadow economy of exploitation, thriving beneath the towers of glass and steel. For families across East Africa, it is more personal. Each coffin that arrives at the airport is a reminder that the dream of a better life abroad can turn into the darkest nightmare. True crime stories often end with justice, the perpetrator behind bars, the victims remembered. But Amina's story, like so many others, ends differently. It ends in silence. There are no court cases, no official apologies, no compensation for grieving families. Just unanswered questions, whispered rumors, and journalists risking their safety to shine a light on hidden horrors. And for every Amina we know about, there may be many more whose names never make the news. As one activist said, the real crime isn't just what happens in those villas. It's the silence that follows. Subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories around the world. Please drop your comment to share your thought with us. Thank you.